Guys got a little ahead of me on this one. They've already got it in the air. They've pulled the skid plates off along with some dirt, and when we get the chassis off, we'll power wash the whole thing. This Jeep's got quite a few upgrades. We got some bump stops, Fox shocks, ARB lockers in this. We're going to be cleaning up these ARB lockers. I'm not real happy with how these plastic lines are routed, especially being that close to the exhaust. As I mentioned earlier, we do see those melt. We're going to disconnect these e-brake cables from the calipers. One thing I wanted to say about these calipers, these JK calipers in the rear can go on either side. If you notice that the bleeder is on the top of this one, that's the way it belongs. If you put this caliper on that side and the bleeder's on the bottom, you'll never bleed it properly and the brake pedal won't feel right. So basically back here you're going to disconnect these e-brake cables. We're also going to disconnect the body bolts, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's get under this thing. Take a look towards the back. Drive shafts have been removed, obviously. Now he has some yoke flanges, which I prefer. If you have our Zeppa stock shafts and you have anything over a 5.3, I highly recommend you upgrade your shafts. You don't have to, but I think you should. He's relocated his EVAP canister to the back, which I believe it belongs. It's out of the harm's way here, and you're not going to damage it like you would if it was over here. And this right here is the breather for your fuel filler neck, and you can see that that's broken. No, it doesn't look burnt, it just broke. So we'll have to repair that. That would definitely cause a fuel smell in some EVAP codes. This intermediate pipe, as it's called, this is what the fuel goes in through when you fill it. This is an early one, and you'll notice that it's just a tube. The later intermediate pipes are larger in diameter, and they have a one-way flap or valve in here, so the fuel can only go this way and not that way back out. And if you have fuel spit back, you want to upgrade yourself to that intermediate tube. It was a problem in the 7, 8, 9, and even the 10 JKs. So the tubes are not expensive, and I believe the dealers have them in stock now. It's got some limiting strops, bump stops. None of that's going to get in our way. Looks like he's got some rock crawler suspension. It might even be, it's hard to tell these days what they are. This is a 241J transfer case, as you can see by this label. But don't be fooled. I've seen this say 241J in Rubicons or ORs, which are off-road transfer cases. You can tell by looking at the front here. This is a 241J because it has the small planetary, so it's 2.7. If this was a larger diameter, that would be the 4-to-1 front planetary, and it would be an OR, even if this said J and not OR. You can also tell on this JK transfer case that there's a slip yoke eliminator with no vehicle speed sensor. So that identifies it as a JK transfer case. If this had a VSS on it, it would be a TJ transfer case, and that goes for the 241 OR in the TJs, and that's what makes them not interchangeable. Now, these two lines here are your fuel line and your purge line. I do not like the way Jeep runs these. These are too close to the exhaust. If I come over here, you'll see this converter can run 2,000 degrees, and you got plastic lines sitting here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these, and in our kit, this new fuel line is just going to snap into this. And we're going to pull them over the top of this skid plate and then run it over to the transmission, top of the transmission and along the back of the transmission up to the fuel rail. That way it won't be exposed to heat, especially when the exhaust comes through here. With most Hemis, you cannot run the exhaust through here, so you got to run it down here, have it hang down, because there's not enough room with the Hemi mount. But with the LSs and the 4-doors, we always run it through here, and it keeps everything above the cross member for better ground clearance. This connector here is not stock. That's for the Ruby crawler, for the electronics. So speaking of the Ruby crawler, you're going to disconnect both shift cables. Now this is the transfer case shift cable, which you will have. This happens to be an aftermarket one, but you will have a transfer case shift cable, and it's going to go up and connect right there. So that's attached to the body, the shifter mechanism. So pull that off and put it out of the way. This is the transmission shifter cable. And again, you're going to pop this off. You're going to remove this cable and have it hang down. And get it out of the way while you pull the body, because that's going to come up with the body. This shifter cable here happens to be for the Ruby crawler, so it's unlikely you guys will have that. So you're not going to have to deal with that third cable. Moving along here, this engine has a skid built into the oil pan. We're probably not going to support that, but this Evo skid, we can bring it forward and then up to the engine mounts as intended. We do have to fabricate the uprights. This axle breather and ARB pipe have oil on them because this differential's been overfilled. When it was overfilled, not only did it come out the vent, but it spit back up into the ARB tube and solenoid, so all that will have to be flushed out. We've got some wires here for camera, lights, whatever we'll deal with. Don't mess with this exhaust until the body's off. The little clips on the manifolds tend to seize up and are difficult to work with, so just wait until we get the body off to deal with that. These transmission cooler lines will be removed. We're not going to use the trans cooler in the bottom of the condenser. It's pretty much useless. We'll show you that setup as we go along. So as you can see, there has not been a lot to disconnect so far. Let's walk around the front. Here's the main electrical connector between the body and the chassis. It's called the C300 connector. This is the chassis side, and up there is the body side. So you're going to disconnect that, get this out of the way, and that's your main electrical connector between the body and the chassis. Again, here's our ARB lines, which are not really routed properly, so we're going to have to redo that. We got some lubable JKS sway bar links, Fox stabilizer shock, RCV, axles, stock drag link. I see nothing wrong with it. One thing we really need to look at is this track bar, where it is mounted on this axle, needs to be in the same plane. If you're on the ground and you measure from the ground up, this needs to be at the same plane that this drag link pivots. And if it's not, you may get torque or bump steer because there's a parallelogram effect. This spindle is definitely a little bit higher than this track bar, but not by much. It'll probably be okay. But I've seen them separated as far as 5 inches, and it causes a lot of issues. So let's look at the body bolts now, because that's really where we're getting to. And make sure you drain all your fluids. I know it's a pain, but it's better to do it now. Now here's your body bolts. There's going to be 6, 3 on either side in the middle, and you just remove those. There's 2 different sizes. The ones in the rear are larger than the ones on the side, so you might want to mark them. There's going to be 6 on the sides, 2 in the front, which I'm going to show you, and there could be 2 or 4 in the rear. The newer JKs don't run the front ones in the rear. They only run this rear one. And I will say that this one does have a tendency to strip. I don't know why. This one does not, but this one does. So we end up going up through the body, cutting a little access door, putting a proper nut plate in, and redoing it when we have to, but hopefully you won't. This chassis is not real dirty, but it's pretty dirty. When the body's off, of course, we're going to power wash the whole thing. Looks like he's been having some interference here between his speed bump and the sway bar link. These are the things that we see and we try to correct during the build. This definitely can be a problem. The Chrysler EVAP system does not monitor. They have a small and a large EVAP detection monitor, but it's not as intense as the GM closed loop feedback EVAP monitoring system, which will pick that up within 1 or 2 drive cycles, and you'll have a check engine light on. I don't like this. This is your vent. This is the ESIM, the EVAP system integrity monitor. Basically inside there is a little valve that holds pressure and vacuum, and that's how Chrysler controls their fuel system pressure. Now, of course, they purge they purge off of lookup tables. Got a B1 going over, so hang on. But there is no feedback for fuel tank pressure in a Chrysler system, so you're pretty much stuck with a spring-loaded valve. This is your vent, too close to the exhaust. We'll have to redo that, and then of course repair this leak. So, actually it's an F-15. The B1s and the F-15s sound a lot alike. Twin engine. The F-16s go over. They have a different sound. We've actually been having some F-35s coming out of here too. This is Nellis Air Force Base. Alright, so you're going to remove these body bolts. The one in the rear. The second one, if you have it, which is right up here. On a newer JK you won't have it. You're going to remove these 3 body bolts. If you got rock rails that are mounted to the frame and then wrap around and riv nut or connect to the body, you're going to have to undo all that, and it can be a pain. There can be several hours of labor to remove the rock rails. In some occasions we've actually just left the body on and done the swap through the front, but these rock rails are removable, so we're not going to have an issue. In fact, we can just go ahead and grab this body and we don't have to do anything with these rock rails. Now the body mount up front here is a little bit special. This is a stud that drops through a hole, and that is a good indicator of where the body is sitting on the chassis, left and right and front to rear. When that stud is right in the middle, that's about where GM or Jeep wanted this. If you're off a 1/4 of an inch forward or back, it's not going to matter. In fact, on the early AEV swaps, they wanted you to move the body back a little bit to get more clearance on the firewall. And you can do that if you have to fudge the body a little bit, leave all the body bolts out, jockey the body around until you get this stud where you want it, and then tighten the nut. But if you put all the mounts where we tell you to, it's going to go right about in the center. So these wires here are all aftermarket for lights and cameras, and we're not going to get into those because they're probably not going to affect you. This is an aftermarket bumper setup, ARB, and if you do have a lower valance, try to leave it in place. It does help with the airflow and cooling. So don't remove that lower valance if you don't have to. If you put an aftermarket bumper on, this is a very heavy bumper. This has got a Warren power plant, which is very tall. It's not sunk properly. This setup here is really heavy and inefficient in my opinion, and I do believe this customer is going to correct that. I'm actually starting to get partial to the aluminum armor and bumpers just because it's rare, at least for me, to contact anything, and why lug around hundreds of pounds of steel when you're really not going to use it. Now if you are going to be brutal and go out, you guys probably saw this Gen 5 on the trail going through Fordyce a few weeks ago, and you can see how good this Jeep looks. He got it cleaned up. You would never know this Jeep was off-road. You get underneath it, there's some damage to the cross member and such, but this customer went minimal on the armor and made it through Forsyth with no damage. So that's about it. The guys are going to get the body down, and then we'll talk about the top. We're going to disconnect the steering shaft and the ABS module. We don't drain the brake system, and if you're using our MoTech accessory drive, you don't even need to drain the power steering system. Now this Jeep did have a hydraulic ram on it, and as I mentioned earlier, he removed it because he wasn't happy with the performance, the noise. I'm not really sure exactly what he wasn't happy with. But with 35s, it's just not necessary, so we're going to ditch all that stuff on top. And I think you'll be surprised how little there really is to disconnect on the top. We got the steering shaft, some brake stuff, a couple of wires, but it's very minimal, and this body's going to be off. My guys can get the body off on these in under an hour if they try. But to drain the fluid properly and check for all these, it's mostly aftermarket. cameras, rock lights, lockers, that takes the extra time. If this vehicle was stock, we could have this body off in 45 minutes.